And then another thing that I want to ask is, so you made like about 50 plus investments, and some of the notable exits that I recall is Toro and Viv, I think. Toro was acquired by Google and Viv was acquired by Samsung, right? Um, what is your criteria of picking, which startups to back? Like, what made you, exposed to a bunch of, companies?
Um, so I think I was like lucky when I got involved in angel investing 10 years ago. Silicon Valley's angel community was still a bit smaller. So I started going to Y Combinator demo days, and there was
Mm.
only 50 people there or something. And, it was just much smaller. There were sort of like 10 companies on stage, and you could talk to every single one of them after the event. It was very different. It was a very different time. And so
You
like
can't imagine that now, right?
no, 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 no. So anyway, things have changed a lot, and so I really like, wow, it's mind blowing, and it's awesome. Like it's so good how much innovation is happening now, and
Yeah.
how many great companies there are in so many different places all around the world. And so, I mean, when it comes to identifying, I mean, so much of it just comes from the people you work with, and
Mm.
this is like another reason to go and invest in angel investing companies is because you meet more new people, like you meet the people that they
Right.
work with, the investors they work with, and who are the great employees from their company, and you start to build a network that has where the opportunities come to you. And so I guess what I would say is that it's just about like it's a many turn game, and it's not about like the individual investment. It's about like
Mm.
the longer you do, the more you realize like you're going to see the same people over and over again, or you'll have the opportunity to work with people in different capacities at different companies for a long time, even way more than I ever expected. And so it's just about like cultivating relationships with great people, and staying involved with what they're doing.
Right. Now that you mentioned about Y Combinator, I want to talk a little bit more about that. So some of your portfolio companies like Lumber School or Substack, I think they're amazing companies and they're, the graduates of Y Combinator, right? What's your view on the YC companies? I just want to ask.
Well, so this is a great example. Like I don't see Substack as a YC company because
Oh,
I was an advisor to Kick Messenger where Chris was one of the co-founders of that company.
oh,
So
really? Oh,
before he,
okay, okay.
I mean, I knew him for 5 years before he started some Substack, and
Mm.
I was advising him on his previous company. And so this is what I really mean, like these connections, build them, and you work with people. And Jiraj, the other founder of Substack, like I worked with him on some projects where we literally were building some messenger platforms together that are related to what I'm working on today. And so a lot of these stories they sort of weave together and come full circle in interesting ways. And so the second that I heard that Jiraj and Chris were working on something, it was just like, and then it happened to be in an area that I thought was super interesting and that I'm really passionate about, which is like figuring out how to empower more people who aren't sort of in technology to get
Right.
leverage from technology to go build their own sort of businesses, or to create more freedom for them to learn something new, or to take their talents and be able to make a living from it. Like it was just easy to do that one.
Right, right, right. Everyone is connected, right? Especially in the Valley. I think a lot of people think it's a very like big community, but also at the same time, for top people, it's a very small community, I think. And so you say you don't actually see Southstack as a YC company, but again, could I ask like what's your maybe like a general view of YC? Is it like a better, really good place to source your deals if you're an angel? What would you say? So because some investors said after the company joined YC, they may be sometimes overvalued, and it gets difficult to invest in those firms. What's your view on this?
I mean, venture is all about picking the right companies, right?
Mm.
So if you would, I mean, I wouldn't worry about the average company. I don't really have an opinion on whether they're overvalued, but like I wouldn't
Okay.
even, you just were to index all of YC companies. I don't know that that's a good strategy. Like I think VC is all about trying to pick the companies that are most likely to succeed.
Mm.
And what I'll say is that like I've been amazed at how many different verticals YC has been able to expand into, and I think it's great because they're bringing the sort of things that have succeeded in software to all these different industries now. I'll say that I don't invest in some of those companies because I can't diligence them as an angel. Like I don't have a team to go and do all the work required to understand
Right.
every company that they now have in their portfolio. but I just love hearing about it and like learning about these new things. So,
Mhm.
I mean, I think in general, like YC has been just 100% positive for the startup ecosystem. And then I think like it all comes down to, at the end of the day, picking the right company, because any of the companies that were really hugely successful from YC,
Mhm.
there's nobody that like is really upset about the valuation they got at YC, right? I mean, it was just a very early stage in the company, and so
Right.
where they're all very happy investors. So it
Right.
doesn't really change the equation, which is like you really just want to end up um, working with the best teams.
True, true, true. And you mentioned about team right now, but so all those 50 investments, you invested without having any team, right? How do you like do the due diligence or like, like how do you get source deals? How do you manage all the emails from your founders? How did all thing happen?
Yeah, there's a huge mix there. Okay, so like some people like Chris and Jiraj, if I know they're doing a company, like I don't have to do any diligence really. I mean,
That's true.
we have a very quick conversation, and I'm happy to be involved with their next thing. And there's been a lot of great people I've worked with like that, actually, like ex Zynga folks, like Roger Dickey's, both of his companies, and even Andy Tian, who started a company, who is former GM of Zynga Beijing.
Hmm.
So like, there's been a lot of great um, companies that have come out of those types of deals where it was just someone great. Like I want to work with them again, and there's not a whole lot of diligence to do. When it comes to like other types of companies that like didn't come directly from my network, I think I really value people that come in with a warm introduction, right? I mean, I think
Right.
at the end of the day, like if someone's able to get in touch with me through somebody I really trust, that means a lot. And so like I always try to
Hmm.
take the time to meet with people who come in through that way. I think of course like going through your email and digging into every sort of um, introduction, or not introduction, but just like a pitch that's sent to me without an introduction,
Hmm.
it's it would just be too time consuming without a team,
Right.
right? So um, that's not to say that I haven't replied to those emails before.
Hmm.
I mean, I think there have been situations where I've replied to those, and probably some situations where I've ended up investing in those types of companies.
Mm.
But in general, it's much more difficult for me to do without the bandwidth.
Mm. Right, right. And what will be the value that you provide to those founders? So you mentioned that you may not actually do a lot of diligence if you know the founders or if you actually understand the market, right? So you may be a really good expert for those founders that's doing gaming companies. But for other founders, what's the value that you provide to them?
Well, so I actually haven't done that many investments in game companies, which
Oh,
is kind of interesting. Actually, like all the companies I'm talking about, from ex Zynga employees or people
uh-huh.
that I worked with in the past, none of them really started game companies after, for the
Oh,
most part. What
interesting.
I would say is like one way to look at games is like in many ways it's just consumer applications.
True.
And actually in some ways, not always, it can be one of the most difficult places to build consumer applications. It's very, very competitive market.
That is true.
Every games has so much competition, and so if you can succeed in games, it's it's a very good practice to succeed in other markets. um, One of the nice things about game companies is like you need operational excellence to succeed in games. Like it's very rare that you can succeed for an extended period of time with a game unless you're very, very good at operating it over
Hmm.
time. So if people can bring that skill set with them, and then they get a chance to succeed on another type of consumer app, they usually are like, they've really got the skill set they need to go and to do a great job there. So I would say that in a lot of ways, like those experiences, how do you grow a game? How do you decide what to work on next? The roadmap and all of this, like how do you differentiate in a crowded and competitive market? These are things that you can bring from games into anything in consumer, and it's all pretty applicable. And I'm not saying like the more people tend to think it's how do you gamify these other experiences. I'm actually,
Mm.
generally speaking, I don't think that you should. I don't think you should
Okay.
gamify your experiences actually. But when it comes to like, what are some of the ways you can improve retention? How do you measure these things, and how do you figure out what to build next? These are skills that are just sort of like operating skills that you get from building consumer products, and that's what drives what succeeds for the most part. So in some ways, I just think games is a great training ground for people to get good at these skills.
Right, I see. Interesting. Yeah, because when I was looking at your portfolio companies, I was a bit confused because I saw like you're really like a game guy, so you would invest in a bunch of games. And I had this image of like when I look at the portfolio, was it like a drive time, which was like a company that would allow you to do game while driving? When I saw that, I was like, okay, this is the kind of the company that Justin invests in. But when I look at other firms, it was like Snack Pass or other firms that's like food delivery services. I think you invest in a few of them. I got a little bit confused, but now that you explained that, it makes sense.
Well, I mean, let me give you just a quick example. So
Sure.
with uh, well, so like I could explain how even like any of these investments sort of relates to lessons maybe I learned from Zynga, whether
Please.
it be operational or just even business models. So if you think about a company like Lambda School,
Yeah.
like it's really hard to imagine how like what would you see in that company that reminds you of some of your experiences that it resonated with me very quickly. And one of them was well, first of all, Austin is an amazing founder. He's really really great. And so that was like the first thing that got me hooked. But the second thing is like from a business model perspective,
Yep.
actually Lambda School is doing to education what Zynga did to games. And so I mentioned earlier, what did Zynga do to games? We took the friction off the front end. We took the risk off the front end. Before there was risk in buying a game. You spent $50 and you'd bring it home, and a lot of times you would not like what you got. If you look at Lambda School, you have a bunch of people that have the same experience with university. They spend $20,000 or $100,000 and they don't like what they get. And so my question was like, well, how do you turn this into the experience like freemium brought to games with Zynga?
Mm.
And that to me, I think freemium is like one of the native sort of web experiences for how these different businesses have to be remodeled and to exist. And so when I look at Lambda School, it's like you make it free up front. And when you do that, you de-risk it. And so you can do all these things around how to make it social and how to make it way more inclusive in the types of people who can get access to the education. And then on the tail end, they pay you if it works. So if you abstract it like that, it's in many ways, it's
It's so
very simple.
similar. Yeah, it's so similar. Yeah, for the audience sake, to give more introduction about Lumber School. So basically, Lumber School is a coding school, and for usual coding school, you need to pay fee upfront, and you don't know the outcome, right? But for Lumber School, you don't have to pay upfront, and after you graduate, and you will get a position at software company. They deduct some of the so they basically get some of the money of the salary you get at that firm, right? That's the how Lumber School works now. Yeah, it's very similar to what Zynga was doing, kind of democratizing the whole industry, right?
Yeah. And if you don't get a job, then you don't pay anything. And so it removes the risk for the people that are going to school. And I know this is a really this is a very real problem for a lot of people over the last 10 years or so when many people have come out of school without a job. And so the value to
Right.
those, well, it's very obvious because they have friends who have been through this or brothers and sisters. And so to me, I see this as like a potential solution to that problem. And so yeah, I got really excited about that. And like, I think there's always something about these companies that I feel like is, it's not always something I learned from Zynga. Of course, I'm learning things from the investments I'm making all the time.
Sure.
So it's just, there's something that that I've learned along the way that makes me excited about it in addition to the team and their approach.
Very interesting. Very interesting indeed. Okay. And so another thing that I want to ask is there like a core investor that you always invest together with, or is there like there's none?
There's just a lot of friends that I share things with. And I think you start to know like who gets excited about what types of things, right? And so
Mm,
it really just depends on the type of company. Um, my there's a lot of people that I love to work with, but they don't all get excited about the same types of things, and that's fine. It's
mm.
just like if you want to go to a certain restaurant, if you want to go to sushi, you bring a friend who likes sushi, right? And if I want to, I'm going to go share it with people who like game companies. So it just depends. But
Makes
yeah, I mean,
sense.
there's a lot of great people that I've been able to invest with multiple times, and some of them, I was able to to get them involved with Playco. So